Hello everyone, Dr. Mike here, TCOM 101. In this video I want to continue to talk about some critical views of the digital society of modern society. Of course, people talk about George Orwell, 1984, and fears about Big Brother and surveillance technology. Okay, we can call these Orwellian fears, privacy concerns. And these are hugely important in the 21st century because information technology permits us to monitor and even control people in the workplace and in the marketplace, and this raises all kinds of critical questions about privacy. I love this cartoon. Oh, don't worry, Mrs. Davidson, it's only a small microchip implant behind the ear. No one with a clear conscience need have any concern. Maybe we've come to the point where we live in a transparent society. That was the name of a book published by a man named David Brin, who asked the question, will technology force us to choose between privacy and freedom? In the transparent society, Brin predicts social transparency. I think we're almost there. And the further erosion of individual privacy. Why? Because we have all this low-cost surveillance, communication, and database technology. Okay, another concern that's been brought up is the idea of future shock. We live in an age of accelerated, fast-paced change. Can people handle this change? That's the idea set forth by Alvin Toffler in a book called Future Shock. Future shock is our ability to adapt to change. Too much change too quick. Some days I really feel this overwhelming sense of future shock, and then we have a rapidly changing, very mobile kind of society. Future shock, according to Toffler, is the shattering stress and disorientation that is induced in individuals by subjecting them to too much change in too short a time. People can't handle fast change sometimes. Now, I see an example of future shock at work every time I read a story about the rise of fundamentalism. I think that's a backlash in some ways against modernity, against the rise of technology. And fundamentalism, of course, is a highly conservative religious movement characterized by going back to a simpler time and strictly conforming to the sacred text. All right, another critic of the modern high-tech world was Neil Postman, who wrote a book called Technopoly. That's how he described the modern society, that it's a technopoly. Technopoly, according to Postman, is a culture in which technology is deified, it's praised, and it extends its control to every aspect of our lives. Okay, Postman claims that the U.S. has been inundated with technophiles, people who love technology but don't see the dark side, the downside of technology. And so we really need, instead of always praising and worshiping technology and finding our authentication in technology, maybe we need to think critically about technology. Okay. And when we look down the road into the future, some of it does seem very scary. Okay. Now, technology has always produced excesses and has always had a dark side. Think about child labor as a dark side of technology. Have you ever heard of people called the Luddites? The Luddites, this was the name given to bands of working men in the industrial centers in England who rioted in the early 1800s. They rioted. Why did the Luddites riot? They were named after one of their leaders, a man named Ned Luddite. They were very upset with the working conditions and the fact that machinery was taking over and displacing jobs. Okay, so at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, the English weavers protested the arrival of all these mechanized looms. How did they respond? They smashed them with hammers. Okay, they were very upset at technology and job displacement. So the Luddites viewed new technology as a threat to their livelihoods and to their ways of life. Now we do have modern day Luddites. In fact, anybody that kind of rejects technology today, we call them a Luddite, or people who are super critical about technology. So let me introduce you to a couple of critics of technology. One of them is a Frenchman named Jacques Ellul, who back in the 1960s wrote a book called The Technological Society. Another kind of modern day Luddite is Neil Postman, who wrote a book called Technopoly. Now, Postman and Ellul are both technological determinists. What's technological determinism? That's the idea, the theory, the notion that technology plays a central role in determining, pushing forward our culture and our social development. So anytime a new technology comes along, technological determinists predict it's going to have a major impact on every aspect of our lives. Okay, Ellul wrote about La Technique. Okay, he was worried about the tyranny of technology over humans that started in the late 20th century. Okay, he argued that technology and worshiping technology fueled the modern world instead of humanism, a basic desire to improve humanity. Ellul also came up with the idea of the autonomy of technology. This is the notion that technology becomes a system that obeys its own laws. In other words, it's autonomous. It takes off on its own. Ellul's view of technology was that once it's let out of the laboratory, technology can't be turned off. Postman wrote an amazing book in the 1990s called Technopoly. A technopoly is a culture in which technology is again deified. We worship it. We look to it as for the solutions to all of our problems, and it starts to extend its control to all aspects of life. Postman argued that we deify technology, which means that the culture seeks its authorization in technology, finds its satisfactions in technology, and eventually takes its orders from technology. And maybe we do turn to technology in the way that Postman describes in Technopoly. Now, Ellul raised a really important question about technology. He said, if a thing is technically possible, does that make it automatically morally right to do it? Just because we can clone humans doesn't mean that it's morally correct, ethical, proper. Or genetic engineering. We can do it, but is it the right thing to do? Are we being victims of what Ellul called the technological bluff? The idea that we must always go the way that technology is leading us. Now, a lot of these concerns I've called the Frankenstein syndrome. The idea that we use technology to create something and then it kind of backfires. It bites back at us. It has horrible, unintended, unanticipated consequences. Sometimes things do bite back. The law of unintended consequences is very, very real. Ellul recognized this. He said there could be no pure progress. Perverse effects or unintended consequences are inherent in the existence and development of science as technique. Postman had the same view. He believed that technology was always a Faustian bargain. The Faustian motif. This goes back to Goethe and German history, a great literary figure who wrote books and plays. One of these dealt with this character Faust who struck a deal with the devil. Well, Postman believes that technology is always a deal with the devil because there's always a dark side to technology. The technology can be our friend for sure. It can do marvelous things, efficiency, productivity, wonderful innovation and advances. But always remember that this friend has a dark side, a negative side. The neo-Luddites and the other critics of technology make some pretty persuasive arguments about it. They claim that technology can dehumanize and alienate people, that it can destroy cultures, societies, and family structure, that technology can pollute languages, that technology can reduce the need for person-to-person contact, that it can alter the very definition of what it means to be human, and it can damage our fragile environment. Should we fear something called the technological singularity? Okay, the creation of a super intelligence. These are all critical views of technology. Now, how about this? Consider all the Hollywood movies that emphasize the dark side, the unintended consequences of technology. There are hundreds of these movies. Let me just highlight a few of them. Okay, just a handful of these movies. Frankenstein, an obsessed scientist, creates a living being from parts of exhumed corpses using science and technology. And of course this backfires. They've created a monster. Here's a great movie from the silent era, Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times. Modern Times is a wonderful movie that takes a critical view of technology. In this movie, Chaplin turns against the modern industrial society, the machine, the industrial age, and all notions of progress. How about the movie WALL-E? In this movie, mankind has abandoned Earth because it's become covered with trash from products sold by powerful multinational corporations. The dark side of modern society. Dr. Strangelove, this is a dark comedy about the Cold War. But in this movie, a crazed U.S. general unleashes a H-bomb attack on the Soviets. And then the frantic president has to somehow find a way to stop it. A very dark comedy. And it's about the autonomy of technology. Once it's unleashed, it's awfully hard to pull it back. How about 2001, A Space Odyssey? An incredible movie. In this movie, the astronauts on the spaceship are controlled by a computer system that's every bit humankind's equal and maybe his superior. Jurassic Park, another great example of technology and the use of technology backfiring. Of course, in this movie, there's a remarkable theme park built around actual dinosaurs created from DNA deposits. So we have the science to do something, but again, unanticipated consequences. How about I, Robot? An amazing movie. In this movie, the protagonist saves the world from out-of-control robots. Robots that have developed beyond human ability to control them. Gattaca, a very, very interesting and kind of scary movie about genetics. In this movie, genetic engineering is important, okay? And it's common. And your DNA is the primary determination of your social class. Artificial Intelligence, a Spielberg movie. Quite a critical view of artificial intelligence. In this movie, technology is advanced to the point where people depend on robots for every task, including companionship. The robots start to replace friends, lovers, children. A more recent movie is Ex Machina, A very interesting story about artificial intelligence and robotics. This is a science fiction film that, like so many others, plays on fears of the future of artificial intelligence. A final film about the dark side of technology is really a documentary, a famous documentary called An Inconvenient Truth. This was a big warning about climate change and global warming. This was Al Gore's documentary, part of his campaign to make the issue of climate change more recognized as a problem worldwide. You know, technology does have a big impact on the environment, whether it's climate change or e-waste. We've talked about some of the environmental issues in this class, especially the problem of e-waste. But, you know, technology can have incredibly difficult and damaging and lasting results on the environment. Okay, so the inconvenient truth brings up the issue of global warming. Now, e-waste, of course, that's another huge problem. All this debris from cast-off computers and electronics, it usually gets headed just straight to the landfill. Okay? And these landfills provide opportunities for poor people to recycle some of the precious metals and other products found in this toxic waste. You know, and that's the problem. It's toxic. There are deadly substances like lead, cadmium, mercury that are used in these products, and they can all end up contaminating our environment. The solution? I suppose it's to recycle and to conserve and to build more eco-friendly, less toxic products. But we have to find solutions so we can get to sustainability. We need to be able to sustain human life. What is sustainability? All the social environmental practices that protect and enhance our human and natural resources. Those are the resources that are being needed by future generations to enjoy a quality of life that's at least equal to what we have now, or maybe even better. All right, so what's needed in terms of all of this technology? Well, I think it's really some critical thinking, a lot of public debate and education, and we need an ethic of resistance. We need to push back against technology once in a while. Neil Postman proposed we become loving resistance fighters. Not that we advocate violence, but when we find an opportunity, we kind of push back against the negative impacts of technology, especially in our everyday lives. Anyway, that's some information and some perspective on some critical views about technology in the modern world. Please continue to take care of yourself and each other, and I hope to see you real soon. So long, everyone.